Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and I want to say that I'm very pleased to be standing here as a member of the Joint Committee on Climate Action. And I want to thank in particular my colleague here, Hildegard Naughton, my own Fine Gael colleagues, and indeed all the members of the committee for the fantastic work that we did. We worked incredibly diligently since last July, and we certainly didn't see eye to eye in a lot of things, but at the same time, I think in general we did. And I think it was an eye-opener for an awful lot of people who came with particular viewpoint to the committee, and I think it was a fantastic exercise in democracy. And I also believe that the establishment by the government of both it, by Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, and indeed the Citizens' Assembly, and asking them to examine how Ireland can become leaders in climate action by the then Taoiseach Enda Kenny, I think was tremendously important and very timely, and I want to commend them for that. And indeed the establishment of both committees, the Citizens' Assembly and the work that they did, and indeed our own committee, was something that I myself had advocated for, and I was delighted that that it actually happened. And what has become clear to us all, I think, is the fact that political leadership is required for long-term climate action planning. And I have to say that I'm looking forward to Minister Bruton's report on the publication of his climate plan. I know he's working incredibly hard on this, but we also have to say that it is not just leadership from our minister here or from the government politicians, but it is leadership across the political spectrum. I believe that the work that we are going to have to do as a Dáil, but also as a society, means that the actions that we have to take should not become a political football. And I think that's really, really important, because I have always advocated that we should have a whole of government and a whole of society approach, and that we should be united in our efforts, because we are in fact the transition generation, and the next 12 years will be critical, but they will not be easy. These are huge, huge changes in the way we live our lives. We're going to have social, we're going to have economic, and we'll have cultural impacts. And therefore we must encourage our people, our local communities, our economies to ensure that we can achieve it, but also that rural and regional regeneration will also be at the heart of everything that we're doing. And as an island nation, it is in our national interest to demand that higher emitting nations take action. If not, this one single island of ours will be a collection of islands within a couple of generations if the waters rise as predicted around our shores. I believe also that our extensive diaspora should be tapped into to carry the message of mitigation and adaptation, so that they themselves can also adjust their lifestyles and influence their communities. We talked a lot in the committee about a just transition as being a huge part of how decarbonisation is achieved. And in my own county in Offaly, Bordemona, of course, are a significant employer along with the ESB for many decades. And clearly Bordemona made significant decisions around restructuring as a result of the lack of demand now for the peat that they produced, in terms of ESB no longer requiring it. It is a very difficult time for workers, it's a difficult time for communities, it's a difficult time for the company. But especially in my own county, because we are the county that's most impacted. We had employment for generations when in other counties people had to leave these shores and emigrate. However, Offaly County Council, I think, have led the way in terms of their transition team establishment. They have pulled together numbers of stakeholders, and in fact next week they're going to have a jobs matching fair, which is going to be held in Mount Lucas in Dangan. And it'll be a great opportunity for workers, for potential employers to connect. And I believe that there is certainly potential there in other areas to take the lead, or to follow the lead of the County Council in Offaly. Also, I think there's potential there around upskilling the Bordemona workers, because we are certainly going to need a huge amount of workers, and it's been very clear to us that it's going to be very difficult for us to do this job if we don't have the skilled people. Communications are an enormous requirement, I think, in terms of getting the message out around the changes that we have to make, and I was delighted to attend the Offaly Public Participation Network's launch of Green Offaly last week in Lochborough Discovery Park. where they're going to reach down into communities to try and help communities take ownership of the actions they'll be taking. I'm also glad to note that RTÉ and Met Éireann has certainly seemed to have taken the opportunity to provide accurate information and help communicate the message of climate change to our people. It's something that I've long advocated for, and I've noticed that since the establishment of our committee that certainly there seems to be much greater and detailed coverage, and I want to commend them on that. And just finally, I see I'm almost out of time, but I just wanted to refer to agriculture. We are an agricultural nation. And I'm very glad that as a result of the committee's report, that the demonisation of our farmers has been reduced, I think, somewhat by their work. And I think Justice Laffoy herself was very clear at the first meeting when she came to say that she would like to have had more time to look at the impact of agriculture in terms of emissions, and commended that we would do something in this area, and we did indeed. And I have to say that in my own community, farmers are certainly not adverse to change. They are quite willing to change, but that fairness must be at the foot of that change, and I think the new CAP is certainly going to have an impact in that area. We also mustn't forget the impact that climate change is having on people in the developing world, and how they are already feeling the impacts of the change in terms of desertification, lands underwater. We can see the migration. I could go on. But all I can say is this. Today we had a Shannon debate where there was a joint committee session, and we had a number of young people who were absolutely passionate about this, young researchers. We have all of the evidence. We know what's happening now. We cannot deny it. And now is the time for actions. We have had enough words up to this point, I think.